Okay, so today here we have another Transit 2018 2-litre Ecoblue diesel engine, and we are going ahead with a timing belt replacement. As many of you, if you've watched our previous videos, you should know that these run on a wet belt system. Now we've prepared everything, taken off engine mounts, coolant pipes, crankshaft pulley, emptied the oil, taken the sump off, emptied the oil filter, emptied the oil, and just gonna explain a few things again. The timing belt cover is held on by, I think these are 8mm bolts. We've got a 20mm here, this one's a 20mm, and I think 1 or 2 10mm bolts at the bottom somewhere, like this one here. This is a 10mm. Now when taking this crankshaft pulley off, I will be explaining it here. It's very stiff, so once you take the bolt out, it won't come out. They've put 2 holes with threads in it, so if you use some sort of bearing puller to just put the bolt through there, put a washer through it first, and then put a bearing puller and just turn it with the bearing puller. Make sure it pulls the crankshaft pulley, as if you try to put a pry bar in between, we've seen in a lot of cases where these bits are broken off and the crankshaft pulley is damaged, so you want to avoid that from happening. Now we're just going to go ahead and take off the timing belt cover, remove our oil pump after, clean it up, clean up the surfaces, prepare for us to put the new timing belt on. Okay, so we've taken off the cover now. It's sealed pretty well from factory, so it's difficult to take off. Make sure you're careful when you're taking off this cover. You don't want to damage the engine block itself, as you might have issues with engine oil leaks when putting it back together, so make sure you're extra careful, as I said. Now everything seems fine. We're going to time up the engine, lock the top cams. There's a mark on the gear wheel on the crank, and once that lines up, you will be taking off the belt, tensioner, cleaning up the surface, and then taking it from there. So as you can see, we've taken off our timing belt, tensioner, cleaned up the surface, make it nice and shiny, as we do want the cover to sit flush, and have no leaks in the future. So it's ready for us to put the new timing belt kit on, so the timing belt and the tensioner. We've locked the top cams, as you can see, and as we've previously stated in our other videos, the marks on the crankshaft gear, but we'll show it again in a second. So it's ready for us to put it on, and then we should be taking it from there. So here are the parts we'll be replacing. So the sump, new timing belt cover, the crankshaft still doesn't come on the cover, it comes separately, but we put it on. That's our timing belt, oil pump belt, and the original board timing belt tensioner. Now we're just going to go ahead, put the oil pump belt on first, and then the timing belt, and then we should be putting the sump on once we've put the timing belt cover on, all the mountings on, so it's easier for us to clean up the surface and put the sump back on. Okay, so we've put our new timing belt on, new tensioner, tighten it down to torque spec 25 Newton meters on the new bolt, and we rotated the engine to see if our timing lines up, and it does line up. Everything is all good. Now down here we're putting the oil pump belt on. We'll be putting the oil pump on as well. We've cleaned up the oil pump, now it's ready to put on, and then we'll be closing it up, putting the engine mounts on, cleaning the bottom, and then putting the sump back on. Okay, so we've put our mounting on as well, timing belt tensioner, no, fan belt tensioner, and the coolant holes here, when we separate, it's got 2 bolts connected to it, so we put those back on. We're going to clamp up the whole coolant hose pipe, and yeah, so now the mounting's back on, we can carry on working from the bottom, cleaning up the sump, preparing to put the sump back on, putting the oil in, and putting the power steering pump back on as well, as we take it off, as it does interfere with the timing belt cover. So now we're just going to put it back. Okay, so we've cleaned up the surface, prepared our new sump to be fitted on, cleaned up the oil pump, replaced the oil pump belt, put the covers back on, cleaned up the sieve inside just to pick up, make sure all that was blown out with air. Now, someone asked the other day if we could check the condition of the belt by removing the sump, and as you can see, it's not possible at all. You'll have to take out the cover on the side. Oh yeah, all looks good now. We've replaced the filter. Now we're gonna put the sump back on, let it dry for a bit, and then put the oil in and crank it up. Okay, so after we closed off the sump yesterday, we left it to dry. We didn't put the engine oil in. Now we come in the morning and we put the engine oil in. Takes 10 litres these engines, and we started it up. We've had it running for about half an hour now. We're just checking that there's no oil leaks or nothing before we hand it over to the customer. And we'll make sure that it's nice and clean, everything's ticking over. And we've also topped up the coolant, as we did remove a few coolant pipes. So everything looks good now. And once we put the headlight back on, we've got the time to took off the headlight. We'll put the headlight back on and hand it over to our customer.